Pennsylvania, 10 girls, white bonnets, braided hair, arithmetic on the chalkboard, and then a man walks in with a gun. His name, Charles Roberts IV. Within minutes, the room that was filled with the soft scratch of pencils and the sound of children whispering was filled with terror. 5 little girls would never walk out of that room. 5 more were left fighting for their lives. Imagine the silence that followed. Imagine fathers running. Imagine mothers collapsing. Brothers and sisters with questions that no one could answer. Tiny shoes left at the door. Unfinished lunches in their boxes. Beds that would never be slept in again. That is evil. Raw, unfiltered, unexplainable. It has no sense. And if anyone has the right to hate, I think those parents would. But while the blood was not even dry, before the funerals had taken place, something happened that the world could not comprehend. Members of that Amish community walked, not into a courtroom, but down to the home of a shooter's widow. And they knocked on her door, and they held her. Excuse me. And they told her, "We forgive your husband." They created a fund to support her and her children. And one grandfather of a murdered girl quietly said, "We must not think evil of this man." How do you say that? Where does that come from? There were no cameras when those parents cried into their pillows. There were no headlines when they walked past empty bedrooms. There did not erase the grief. It did not deny justice. It did not minimize the evil that they were experiencing. That kind of forgiveness does not come from denial. It does not come from pretending things are not that way. That kind of forgiveness is a decision that hatred will not multiply, a decision that violence will not claim them also. It was a decision that evil would stop there. They refused to let hatred claim yet another set of victims. They refused to let violence reproduce itself in their own hearts. They made a decision that violence would not spread further through them. They could not control what was done to them, but they could decide what would grow in them. And that decision declared something greater. In doing so, a world watched. In doing so, a world was confused. In doing so, a world could not comprehend what they were seeing. They glimpsed at something that they could not explain, strength that did not look like strength, a power that did not look like power, in how this community overcame evil. They chose good. They chose to overcome. We are living in an age where outrage spreads faster than kindness, where revenge is celebrated. You know, when I was preparing this, I had to think of how many years ago. It was when, and so, quick poll. How many people here recognize the name Osama bin Laden? Oh, so some of our youth do. That's good. I thought maybe this is just in the history books now. One of the masterminds behind the attack on America in 2001. And something that I remember that stood out to me was when the Americans did catch up to him. The celebration that took place when he was killed. Now, for the world, that makes sense. But for those, there were many conservative Christians celebrating. And for those of us who claim to follow the one who says, love your enemies, do good to them who persecute you, bless those who do evil to you. If we claim to follow him, there should not be more celebration over his death than perhaps the assassination that sort of drew me to speaking about this when Charlie Kirk was killed. We are living in an age where revenge is celebrated, where being right is often more important than being righteous. Scroll through the headlines, listen to public conversations, watch how quickly people cancel, attack, and divide. It feels as though evil doesn't just exist. It advances, it provokes, it dares us to respond in kind. And if we're honest, sometimes we do. When someone wounds us, our instinct is not goodness, it's retaliation. It's to hit back. It's to relish in seeing some misery come upon them. And when we are lied about, we want to defend ourselves sharply and quickly. But into a world no less hostile than ours, the Apostle Paul wrote to believers living under the shadow of a Roman Empire, a regime that would eventually martyr many of them, including Paul himself. And it is from that setting that we get this radical sentence that Paul wrote at the end of Romans chapter 12. Do not be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. It does not say avoid evil. It does not say pretend it isn't real. It says overcome it. That is not passive. It is not weakness. This is spiritual warfare at its highest level. And friends, evil seeks to conquer your heart first. Evil does not win when it kills you. Evil does not win when it kills you. But when it makes you bitter and cynical and harsh and is when it wins. Because the moment evil like that, it is winning. But what if goodness that Paul writes about is not fragile? What if that is strength? What if responding in a Christ-like love is not surrender, but victory? I am excited this morning from Romans 12 in this series. It is Sermon 12 from in overcoming evil and how we can do that. And this morning I've entitled it simply, With Good. Has there ever been a more divisive time? Has there ever been a more difficult time to live in? I suppose every generation has said that so far. But there are increased levels of anger and cynicism and hatred all around us. So many people are angry. So many people all around us are frustrated. And then as soon as things don't go their way, it sparks anger. There is increased confusion in our age regarding right and wrong, complete confusion. And so when we disagree, accusations of hatred and division run rampant. The understanding of right and wrong that formed societal foundations for centuries are discarded. And so we are divided on many points. We are deeply divided. We're divided in our society on issues of life, on gender, on marriage. Our society has taken these issues or topics or situations that for centuries we have placed in the hands of God and have recognized His authority over these situations. And it seems that now we've decided that He no longer is the authority, and He is dismissed. And our contention with evil is weakened to the point of a society not being able to distinguish any longer between what is right and wrong or what is even good or bad. Overcoming evil with good. So what can we do? What is the light that you and I can hold? What can we do? The answer to this question is found throughout Romans chapter 12. I've been talking about that for the last number of months. And we are given directives against the evil that is threatening us on every side. Imagine just going back again to when the Apostle Paul wrote this letter to that small church in Rome. They are living under absolute power. It is not symbolic. It is a power that for many life sentence to death as well. This letter was written to a tiny church. Paul was in the city of Corinth when he wrote this in around year 57. And he writes to this little church in Rome. And on the throne of Rome sits a man by the name of Nero. And when Paul wrote this letter, Nero's darkest days had not yet even fully unfolded, but the machinery of Rome was ruthless. Emperors were hailed as divine. Incense burned in their honor. To refuse participation was to mark yourself as disloyal. To confess Jesus as Lord in Rome was not private devotion, it was quiet rebellion. Just a few years before this, the Emperor Claudius had expelled the Jews from the city. And by the way, that's mentioned in Acts chapter 18, verse 2. Claudius had removed the Jews from the city. Anti-Semitism was rife. And with Claudius being gone, some of the Jews were coming back into the city of Rome. When they returned, though, tensions were simmering, and Jewish believers and Gentile believers were struggling to find unity in their church with the watchful eyes of the emperor and the empire all around them. This was not a safe community. They must have wondered, how do we live in such an age? Rome was magnificent and merciless. Up to 1/3 of the population in Rome at this time were slaves. Human beings were property. Infants, the infanticide that took place here. If you had a baby you didn't want, you just took them out to the hills and deserted them. That was law. It was legal. Gladiators bled in the arenas for sport. Political rivals disappeared. Informants whispered and fear kept order. And then Paul writes to the Christian church to encourage them with this letter of how to live in evil. And he writes, and by the way, in about a year, Rome would burn. There were 14 precincts in the city of Rome, and only 4 of the precincts were untouched by this fire. The city was ravaged. There was 10 of them were burned. And Nero needed to find someone to blame, and so who did he blame? He blamed the Christians, this small group that he disliked anyway. And so he started arresting Christians and unleashed one of the first persecutions. They were arrested, they were tortured, they were crucified, they were thrown to the dogs as Romans gathered around to watch the festivities of this. He took them to his own gardens and covered them in tar and lit them on fire. And that is where the church, that is where this group of Christians was, understanding the evil that was pressing in. And so, friends, what we need to understand is this. If you recognize that we live in an evil time, the church has been here before. We've been here before. And so we need to recognize what is written. What Paul wrote. He wrote this. And can you imagine? Can you imagine what the church must have felt? They wanted a letter from a leader that would say, "It is time for Nero to die. It is time we take up resistance." But he said this: "Let your love be genuine. Hate what is evil." He would eventually lose his life under Nero's reign. But Paul dares to suggest something radical, and it is this: evil does not win by killing you. Evil does not win by killing you. Evil wins when it changes you. When hatred takes root in our hearts, evil is winning. When vengeance becomes our language, evil is winning. And it doesn't matter whether that is in the hockey arena or in the workplace or in our schools. When vengeance is our language, it is winning. When fear replaces love. The empire believed power came through domination, through the revealed sacrificial goodness of Jesus Christ. In a city where there was much division, where there is darkness, where there is tension, it took much courage to read and believe that they would overcome evil with good. These are the verses for this morning. Repay, Paul writes, and so this is the setting. That's the setting of the church. What I've just described, that's where the people were. And he says this: repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink, for in doing so you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome with evil, but friends, overcome evil with good. I'm going to make a few points from these verses this morning. The first being, repay no one evil for evil. We need to remember that if you feel the darkness pressing in, and you will, that this is not the first time. We need to remember and understand that the values of God, compassion and kindness and loving others and grace and forgiveness, even though they may not be emphasized in your places of work or in your communities, they are the values that God honors. And we need to understand and remember when we feel people otherwise, we need to remember that evil has abounded before. Repay no one. No one. Not the person who deserves it. Of course, if we want to repay with evil, the person deserves it. They did something, and this takes no teaching. It is natural to fight back. If you don't think so, let's go to the nursery and with some of the children and put some toys there and watch what happens when one child takes the toy from another. They start hitting. It is natural, it is human when things don't go our way to want to hit back. And so this is where Paul writes, don't do it. Don't do it. See to it that none of you repay evil for evil, but rather do or give thought to what is honorable in the sight of all, not just in the sight of those who agree with you. Do what is honorable in the sight of everyone. And sometimes we are confused over what is actually kindness. But the reality is, most people do not get angry or frustrated over when we are kind, when we are gracious, when we are compassionate, when we are honest. Unless, of course, they are hiding evil. So give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. And so, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink, for by doing so you will heap burning coals on his head. This, of course, goes with what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, where he says, you have heard that it has been said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And friends, that resonates with us. We understand the eye for an eye. But Jesus says, but I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him too. In other words, he's saying, when evil comes to you, do not fight back, but rather open the door to love, to show love. When someone is demanding something of you and requiring you to go the mile, Jesus says, and man up and go to. And that's what it means to heap burning coals on one's head. It's not comfortable. And of course, it's figurative. So what can we do? What are we to do? How can we overcome? Jesus and Paul both say, do not retaliate. Do good to those who mistreat you. Give good things like food and water. I had to think of, I don't have the image here, but I had to think of Dirk Willems, the man who was being pursued by one who was to persecute him. This is in the 1500s. He was being hotly pursued by one who was instructed to kill him. And as this is happening in the Netherlands, and as they are running across a frozen river, the pursuer breaks through the ice and starts calling for help. How easy it would be for us, should that be our situation, to say, thank you, Jesus, you have delivered me. The ice didn't break for me. What a miracle. And Dirk, understanding the call of Jesus in his life, turns back and he sees a man who is going to drown. And he goes back and rescues him. That, friends, is living what Paul and Jesus are teaching here. Didn't end well for Dirk. He was killed. That man said he must obey his boss and proceeded to kill Dirk Willems. Did Dirk have victory? Did he overcome? At the end of God's word, and they overcame. When John is witnessing what is happening in heaven and he sees the white-robed people around the throne, he says this. I think it's in Revelation, in the Revelation chapter 12. He says, and they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They overcame. Did Mr. Willems overcome that day? Absolutely. For they loved their lives not even unto death, it says. It means overcoming does not necessarily mean just staying alive on this planet. It means being faithful to the call of Jesus in our lives. Did Mr. Willems overcome? Had he kept running, none of us would likely know who he is. And yet, how many 500 years later, we still remember how he overcame that day. It's amazing. In 1957, during the height of segregation in America's South, Martin Luther King Jr. is arrested for the Montgomery bus boycott that he was involved with. He received constant threats. His home was bombed while his wife and infant daughter were inside. Police harassed him. Courts targeted him. Many white officials were extremely demeaning to him. One day, after being released from jail, I believe he was in New York City doing some book signings, and a mentally disturbed woman attacked him and stabbed him. She came up to his little table and she said, "Are you Martin Luther King Jr.?" And he said, "Yes." And she attacked him with a knife. After weeks of being, and the blade of that knife got so close to his aorta, the main artery at his heart, that the doctors later said, had Mr. King sneezed, he would have died. After weeks of being in the hospital, Mr. King received a letter, not from a political ally or a powerful supporter, but from a 9th grade girl from White Plains High School in New York. And she simply wrote this: "Dear Mr. King, I am so glad you didn't sneeze." You see, King later shared that letter, and he expressed gratitude, not bitterness. She was a white girl, and she said that in the letter. She said, "By the way, I am a white girl." He expressed this gratitude for the outpouring of kindness he received from people and communities that were rife with hatred toward him. But these are people that were stepping out and saying, we are going to stand with you in the face of this evil, and we're going to speak out with you in the face of this evil. And you see, doing good is an action word. And there are people who need us to write the letters, so to speak. You need to send the text message. It's an action word. Doing good is not passive. Doing good is seeking justice for those who need it. It is standing with the neighbor who lives in fear, and standing with the one it is standing with the one who is oppressed. And King would later go on to say this. He said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." Mr. King chose blessing over bitterness. He chose dignity over revenge. He chose good while being surrounded by oppression, and in doing so, he did not just resist evil. He exposed it. Friends, you and I are called to the same. If your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. And in so doing, you can heap coals of fire on his head. And so finally, do not be overcome with evil. We need to recognize, obviously, it is possible to be overcome by evil. How are we, as children of God, as followers of Jesus, are we susceptible to being overcome by evil? Pardon me. I'll give you a few examples. Here is a homemaker. She's always at home. She turns the news on in the morning. And it's just like an IV that is dripping into her subconsciousness day in, day out, every day. The media is infiltrating into her mind. The sadness and the hard things of life and all of the weight and negativity of the news is dripping into her being. And subconsciously, without even knowing, she is becoming critical. Without even knowing it, she's losing her passion for compassion and kindness. She's losing hope. What a hopeless world we live in. Dear friends, you and I live with hope. Don't ever forget that. Paul also wrote in this letter, rejoicing in hope to this little church that was being persecuted. Rejoice in your hope. She's losing hope. The second person is at school. He made the sports team. He's popular. He wants to maintain that popularity. And so he's out with the boys. And they say, come on, you got to live a little. What kind of world, a sheltered little world do you live in anyway? That's a hard world he lives in. His friends are testing his resolve to be faithful to Christ. And it starts with small things. The crass language and filthy jokes. Experimenting with drugs and sex. And slowly he's being overtaken where he's unsure of what is good and bad or right and wrong. Slowly being overtaken. There's substance all around him. The third person, perhaps, is at your workplace. You see other people advancing, and you realize it's a tough world. The work culture is anything but godly. And godliness is in fact scorned. It's a dog-eat-dog world. If you want to advance, if you want to climb the ladder of success, you don't get there by being nice. He understands. And slowly, he finds himself getting hardened to the things that are close to God's heart. Compassion and understanding are hard to find. And he pushes forward for advancement and success. And it is a slow fade. It is a slow digression into evil. And he doesn't even recognize it. Sunday mornings, all three of these are still at church. But there's a lot of time outside of church where they have not been culturing their heart and their mind by the Holy Spirit. You see, evil can overtake any of us. What is the greatest evil that you have suffered? Every one of us has also suffered evil at the hands of someone Have you been abused? Physically? Verbally? Emotionally? Sexually? What is the greatest evil that you have suffered? And what is the effect that it is having in you? You know how easy it is when we recognize those evils, how easy it is to focus only on those, to not be able to move through that pain. It is easy to allow that thing to become our identity. And dear friends, if you are a child of God, if you have committed to following Jesus, your identity is not in the evil that has been done to you, but it is so easy to allow that to penetrate our mind and our hearts and our beings that we believe things that are not true about ourselves. It is so easy. And so being overcome by evil can happen to disciples of Jesus. At one point, they were in a Samaritan village, by the way, the disciples and Jesus, and the Samaritans had rejected them. I think you can read about it in Luke 9. The whole village scorned them, and the disciples came to Jesus. You know what they asked him? They said, Jesus, should we call down fire from heaven and burn them up? That's what they deserve. And Jesus rebuked them, it says. They went to another village. Peter in the garden. In that confusing night of Jesus praying by himself and being so sad, and then the high priests and the religious people coming to the garden at like 3 a.m. Nothing was making sense, and they were taking Jesus and arresting him, and Peter drew his sword and he swung at the high priest's servant, overcome by evil. And Jesus looks at Peter and he says, Peter, put your sword away. Don't you know that those who live by the sword will die by the sword? Peter, do not be overcome by evil. It is easy. It is easy for us to let the evil that we have suffered, it is easy for us to let it define us. Do not be overcome by evil. Guard yourself. Friends, guard your hearts. Whether you are at school, whether you are at home, whether you are in your community, in your workplaces, guard yourself. Stay connected to the Holy Spirit and the evil that has been done to us. Do not ignore it. Do not pretend it isn't there, but we must pass through it. Peter, about 2 years after Romans was written, Peter would write this: my friends, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you as though some strange thing is happening to you. Do not be overcome by evil. It will come. It will come to you. Do not be overcome by it. By the grace of God, overcome it with good. And so what can we do? What are we to do? Do good. It is an action word. It is not just something we profess. When we do good, it is reflected in our words and in our actions. Doing good is selfless. Doing good, it means that we are not going to be influenced by the evil that surrounds us, and we are surrounded more than ever. Without the devices in our pockets, the evil, in fact, eventually I think there's a sermon brewing that's going to be entitled "The Devil in Your Pocket." Friends, do not be overcome by evil. Do good to those who mistreat you. Do good. It's action. And guard yourself. Guard yourself so that you are not overcome by it. When it comes into us, it will. Evil comes into our being, it will. We live in this world of evil pressing in. Tells the proverb writer, chapter 4, verse 23, guard your heart diligently, vigilantly, for out of it flow the streams of life. And every one of us here is interested in living in life. Guard yourself so that you are not overcome. And finally, overcome. Overcome it by doing good. It is an action word. It is an active pursuant. It is not passive. Friends, God bless you as you continue to build the kingdom wherever you are and be active in overcoming evil with good. May God bless you all.